Hello, Air Warriors, and welcome to another episode of Chevrons, a podcast for the enlisted force. I'm Chief Master Sgt. Sean Sullivan.
And I'm Airman Francesca Scridulis. We are joined by Chief Master Sgt. Joseph Caulfield, the Command Chief of the 105th Airlift Wing in New York.
And we are also joined with Staff Sgt. Currier, a member of the 102nd Intelligence Wing. And I want to start off with you, Staff Sgt. Currier. Tell us a little bit about yourself. What's your military story, your current position, and what are you doing in the wing?
Thank you, Chief. So I am a digital network intelligence analyst with the 203rd Intelligence Squadron here on the 102 IW. So I'm a local man. I grew up right outside of Joint Base Cape Cod in the town of Sandwich. I didn't travel very far to enlist, as you can imagine. I've been there all my life. 4 years ago, when I was 23, I decided I was kind of tired of working dead-end jobs. I wanted to develop myself professionally. I wanted to develop soft skills as well as, more a degree. Didn't want to have to pay myself through a bachelor's degree. I already had my associates. So that led me here, and I haven't regretted it for a day.
That's outstanding. So I am also a Sandwich High School alum, and grew up in Sandwich. So
wow.
Welcome. You are a very valuable part of this unit, and you guys are doing some really, really amazing things over there in that operation and in your group over there. I hear about things. We can't discuss them, but it's really outstanding work you guys are doing, and I appreciate you taking time out to do our episode here.
Thank you, sir. It's an honor to be here.
I also joined the Guard. I wanted to get a little bit of education benefits, and I'm finally starting to take advantage of that, and that's exciting. But then, Chief, what is your military story? How'd you get here?
Well, good morning, everybody, and it's good to be here. And before we get going, I just want to say this is a huge privilege to be here, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to share my story, that you're interested in my perspective and my life experience. So what's my story? So September 1st, 1983, I raised my right hand and joined the United States Air Force. I did exactly what I told my second grade teacher that I would do. I wanted to be in the military, and I wanted to join the Air Force. More than likely, I was following in my father's footsteps, who was a Korean War vet, Air Force. And right after basic training, I landed in what they called a SAC base. I don't know if you ever heard of SAC, but it's Strategic Air Command in central New York. But I was assigned to a TAC unit, Tactical Air Command, and I worked on F-106s as a jet engine mechanic. And it was a great time period to be in active duty. It was the height of the Cold War. And I'll tell you, as a young 18-year-old kid, I never took any more pride than my little tiny piece of being a jet engine mechanic, keeping those F-106s in the air to deter and meet any threat against this nation that would test our nation's resolve. Predominantly at that time, it looked like Russia was our predominant threat, and coming over the North Pole, they would test our resolve and our reaction times and stuff like that. And it was a very good time in my life, my military career, to have that foundation to be in during that time. And then 4 years, I was active duty 4 years, and then got married, had a baby, my daughter, and my wife and I, we actually took a little bit of a chance, and so we separated from service, and we followed some passions of ours, and we wanted to get into ministry, full-time ministry with our church, and / possibly even missionary work, and that path, I would say it's still a passion, but it was brief and it wasn't unfolding the way we thought. So flexibility, as they say, is the key to air power. So we quickly pivoted, and that's how I ended up in law enforcement. And one thing you probably wouldn't know of me, from the introductions prior to this podcast, I have a very robust, like your chief here, Chief Sullivan, law enforcement background as well, and I'm still technically on the books as a police officer in the city of Charlotte. But after a couple of years, there was that itch, because I always took a tremendous amount of pride in this uniform and in the flag that we have, that we wear on our shoulder. And I was introduced to the Guard by my wife's cousin. He said, "Hey, you live literally right down the road from this big C5 base. Go check it out." And I did, and I think it just took one time. Next thing you know, I'm raising my hand again. and joined the Guard in 1994, once again as a maintainer. But something was different this time around. There was opportunities that I wasn't aware of in active duty. We had enlisted members on base that were aviators, and that intrigued me. So I started looking into it. Found out you had flight engineers, loadmasters, and there was a flying crew chief program. And so I landed in the loadmasters in operations, and I was a C5 loadmaster took my first flight somewhere around January 96, flew C5s to 2011. I became an evaluator loadmaster. That's the highest level of proficiency you can get as an aircrew member. And then we transitioned in 2011 to the C-17. And it's like, holy cow, here I am back again at the bottom of the rung. So, and having to learn a new airframe and be good at it, and that was always, if I'm going to do something, I want to be excellent, and it's kind of like, we recite our core values, but we got to live them too, so roll your sleeves back up. I worked myself back up to an evaluator loadmaster on the C-17, and then an opportunity opened up for me to become the 9G group superintendent in operations. And I'll tell you, that was a changing point for me when I got in that job, because I was able to step back for the first time in my career, take a step back, a deliberate step back from my AFSC and focus more on people. And I found when I stepped into that role, it reinvigorated me, because if I could say anything about myself, I love people and I love to serve people. And I think that's the best type of leadership there is out there. And shortly after that, not too long after that, the command chief position opened up at the Air Wing, and I put in for it. And it was very competitive, great, well-qualified candidates, but I got selected and stepped into the role. And for the first time in my life, in my military career, I was able to solely focus on the health, the morale, the welfare, and of course training of people, of the men and women of the 105th Airlift Wing. And I tell you, it's such a huge honor to serve in this capacity. And sometimes I have to pinch myself and say, yes, I am actually doing this job. And I'm just so grateful for the opportunity. And in a nutshell, that 3 to 5 minutes brings me to Otis Air Force Base here today.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you for sharing that. Obviously, nobody gets to either of your levels without having mentors and role models. And there's a different perspective on a mentor and a role model as you develop through your military career. So how somebody just starting off in the military career, what they feel a mentor and a role model is different as somebody advances to become a command chief. So I'd like to start with you, Staff Sergeant Currier. Who were your mentors and your role models, and how are you now evolving into a mentor for others?
So thankfully in my squadron, the 203rd, I have great supervisors, and I have since I enlisted to right now. Technical Sergeant Granberry, Master Sergeant McKean, back then Master Sergeant Meade, now Lieutenant Meade, all great supervisors that I've had, and I would consider each one of them mentors. They truly, we all have mission requirements to meet. We all have basic training to meet. However, beyond that, they're all invested in developing me professionally, helping me achieve what I want to achieve in addition to what, is needed of me in my job. And to me, that's what I want to pass on to the airmen below me. That's really not only what is expected of them, but also how can I help them achieve what they want, which I also think is the key to retention on a slightly different subject.
It absolutely is the key to retention. One of the best ways to keep your airmen engaged or to be engaged yourself is to have hope and to have a path. And how do we facilitate that as leaders? And it sounds like you're doing exactly that. You are looking at your airmen and you're bringing them in and you're trying to motivate them and develop them. So you are wise beyond your years. I appreciate that. Chief, how about you?
Mentorship. We could spend the rest of the podcast as far as I'm concerned on this subject. So important. Something that the Air Force was not good at even 10 years ago. And we're developing and we're getting better. And I'll say 3 things on mentorship. And one, a strong mentor man of strong moral character, active duty, probably saved my career. I was in a section that I would say had toxic senior NCO leadership, and probably dealing with some strong PTSD from Vietnam, because we still had the Vietnam holdouts, when I joined, and they probably just needed help. But as leaders, they were missing the mark completely. And this Master Sgt. Steve Moss took me under his wing and probably saved me from that. And you mentioned, I wasn't planning on mentioning this until you said retention. I would have gotten out and never come back if it wasn't for Master Sgt. Steve Moss and the way he took me in under his wing and he mentored me and created kind of like a safe haven and then allowed me to develop under him. So that's what we hope to achieve in our mentorship. And I look at it, the other two things that I mentioned, I'll look at it like this. There's two other phases. There's a mentorship where, at your level, Airmen Schedulists, and Staff Sgt. Currier, at your level where I need kind of like dual mentors for you. I need you to be laser focused on your AFSC. You don't realize how much we are depending on you to complete our mission, because you have entered that tactical level, right? And I need you to be good at it. And I need somebody of good standing with a long sustained record of excellence to be watching over you to ensure that you never miss a bump and you hit all those marks every step of the way in your career. And then by the time you hit E7, you got to step back, and you got to transition very quickly to leadership, and how important that is. We need to develop leaders, and so it's kind of like a dual thing here. Once again, it's AFSC. But I need you to focus on leading people and being a man or a woman of high moral fortitude and character, all right? Somebody that we can trust to do the right thing on and off the field when nobody's looking. So mentorship.
I think that one thing, everything you described, it demonstrates the importance of mentorship, and we hear it all the time. But I think that sometimes people begin to think of it as a program and not a airman's way of life. And then the process becomes the product. And you both have nailed it of, in my opinion, what the overwhelming philosophy of mentorship is. It is seeking out and developing. It is having that constant OODA loop as you look at your airmen and you help them get to the next step up. And it just that whole integration of one fight, one force, one group of people continuously developing themselves to the next level. That was great on both your parts. I really appreciate that.
Chief, if I could just jump in there, once you said program, it's almost like death sets in a way, and it's like it takes the wind and the drive out of it, because mentorship is not a program. It's not something I'm being told to do. Mentorship is a culture, and you even have to be passionate about it. So I really appreciate that perspective.
A good airman's a good mentor.
That's exactly it. It's as soon as you're like, it's something you have to do, and then it's something I definitely don't want to do if somebody's telling me I have to do it. So organicness is good.
Good point.
Chief Caulfield, I want to know how you stay motivated to keep going every day.
Motivation, thank you for asking that question. It's funny. It was something that I think we had a gut check over the last year and a half with COVID. We entered something that, as a nation, that we haven't, at least in our lifetime, never been confronted with before. How's that? And motivated. How do you stay motivated in these challenging times? And for me, I'm not saying it's easy. But for me, the decision is easy. And check me on this. So in 30 years from now, find me and then tell me and say, hey, you were right, Chief. But for me, I would say the key to motivation is being a part of something bigger than yourself. And there's been a couple times I've gut checked myself, and I looked in the mirror And every time you look in the mirror, I see the red, white, and blue on my shoulder. And I remember, and I start reflecting, the people of this nation that enjoy such a wonderful quality of life and safety and security have actually put their trust in me. And that has motivated me to be the best at what I do, in my AFSC / the job I do now. And even it transcends into that, even into physical fitness. You have to be fit to fight. We use that term all the time, but I'll just throw that out there. But physical fitness, it takes motivation to be physically fit, and especially more so at my age, and I'll leave that off the record. I'm not going to, but, it's motivation. And I think it's the key thing for me is believing what I'm a part of and being a part of something bigger than yourself. And that's how I stay motivated.
Sure. I was thinking about what you said earlier about part of, my job as an airman right now is to focus on my AFSC and how that really is important. And sometimes it's hard to see how important that is when there's so many other people around me that could just pick up the slack if I wasn't doing it,
That's a good point.
But that motivation to see that I am a part of this bigger part, and my piece matters, and so that's why I have to be good at what I do.
Yeah, and both of you probably don't, a certain Currier probably don't realize how much Chief Sullivan and myself, as an enterprise, part of the enterprise, rely on you two. You just don't know it. But we really, there's certain things we just have to know are going to get done and get done well. And we don't have time to necessarily always look over our shoulder to make sure that it's happening. But trust, we're trusting you to get done. That's a good point.
Sure. Sergeant Currier, same question. What keeps you motivated day in, day out?
So what immediately comes to mind is honestly just such a great work culture my squadron in particular has. And that's exactly like one of the biggest things as a new staff sergeant. I try to keep going for the younger airmen coming in behind me. Getting to go to work every day and enjoy it because of who you're working with is most of the battle in motivation for me. And beyond that, when thankfully I'm lucky enough to be in that position in this squadron. But beyond that, when that fails, I think it falls back, right to where Chief was saying. It's absolutely about believing in what you do and just having that dedication to keep pushing. Knowing that what you're doing is making a difference. Absolutely.
Yeah. My mom always says, attitude is everything.
It is. Attitude is everything. The Chief of Staff of the Air Force put out his action orders, accelerate, change, or lose, and one of those involves bureaucracy. Now, we hear about bureaucracy and we think about it at the more strategic, highest levels of the government, but how has bureaucracy affected your unit, and what changes are you making within your section and squadron, Staff Sergeant Currier, and in your wing, Chief Caulfield, to eliminate some of the bureaucracy so that we can accelerate change and we can win?
I like that.
So I can definitely say for my squadron, one of the biggest things is not to let things pile up one on top of the other. You never want to wait until the week that these EPRs are due to start on your EPRs. It's all about managing your time and also making sure that the airmen below you are also staying on top of theirs, because what's immediately their problem that they didn't fix is going to be your problem eventually. And I think it's important for everyone to keep definitely on task with time management. And I definitely try to stress that to people that I lead every day. But
eliminating speed bumps and allowing a more focus through your squadron, and empowering the individuals to take care of things at the lower level. Yeah, you've summed it up. That is a good point of view at your level, and it's nice to see that for people out there listening, that are at the Staff Sergeant, Senior Airman, Tech Sergeant level, you can do things at your level to eliminate speed bumps, to eliminate some of the bureaucracy, and bureaucracy isn't just the person or the office or whatever that's standing in your way. It is eliminating what is not useful and absorbing what is useful in order to accelerate that change, and getting away from that mindset of this is just the way we always did it, or just because. we need to advance that. So I'm glad to see even at your level, you're already attacking that. That's great. Chief, how about yourself?
For me, I guess in my perspective, from where I'm sitting, I would have to say we need the most flexibility at the wing. We trust wing commanders to execute, and now we're a mission, and now we're talking about execute a mission in degraded environments with little to no comms. How are we going to do this if we have to run back to mama and ask permission for everything that we're doing? So, Chief Sullivan, I would say to answer that more directly, in the AFIs at my level, I need to see T3 in capital and bold, and that's the waiver authority to the wing level. We never feel that, and I don't think it's ever malicious that we will slow a process down. We would ever become that speed bump. But if you want to eliminate those speed bumps or make it a lesser where I don't have to put my brakes on so hard, we need that flexibility at the wing level. So where every wing has unique mission sets, operation plans, O plans, and challenges. And how we react to the challenges, and for instance, at the 105th is different than the 102nd, and we need that flexibility. We put tremendous authority into the hands of a wing commander, but you could quickly tie their hands if you tell them they have to ask permission.
Yes.
Every step of the way, bureaucracy.
Yes.
So I would say AFI, I need to see T3s. Bold.
T3 is an empowerment down the line, and having a prevailing attitude of don't tell me what you can't do and why, show me what you can do and what can we accomplish.
Perfect. I like it.
Sergeant Currier, I'll ask you this first, but what is something that you've struggled with, and then how do you overcome that?
So definitely one thing I used to struggle with is approaching each situation objectively. You don't want to treat one situation just the same as another. And that also ties right in with membership. You would never want to treat, one airman like you treat another airman, because they're two entirely different people that have both strengths and weaknesses. And you can't create an airman that is the best possible airman they can be by treating them just like everyone else. It has to be definitely, individualized. And I think that that's something I did kind of struggle with when I joined and I was a, junior enlisted, that, I didn't really quite understand why, everyone couldn't be good at one thing, it's now I definitely have learned to understand that people are much more individualized than their AFSC.
That was a hard lesson I learned in boot camp as the dorm chief. I just couldn't understand why certain people struggled with certain things. And then I failed the PT test, and I was like, whoa, I had no idea that I could fail like that. And it was so like eye-opening, like, whoa, really, everybody's different. They're not dumb for not getting it. They're not a bad person. Everyone's different. That's it. Yeah. Chief Caulfield?
So what do I struggle with? I'm going to go something that's fresh on my heart today, and it deals with, I guess, just the office where I'm at as command chief in my perspective. But something that really, I guess I struggle with a little bit because I'm still trying to figure it out, what it looks like. And, I did spend time and it possibly even take sleep from me from time to time. But, I was at a meeting, and I'll share what I can share what was shared in an open environment where we won't violate OBSEC. Hey, General Brown says we need to accelerate change or lose. I cannot stand that. In the first time in my career, the word lose or the possibility, the thought of it has been introduced to the United States Air Force. If we don't change, if we don't accelerate this, we could lose. And he's trying to, I believe when I heard that, he's trying to break apathy and complacency. So I was recently at a national level type meeting, and it was a similar theme. And they were talking about, they said, next time you're on base, look at a staff sergeant. So I'm looking at you, Staff Sergeant Currier. Look at a staff sergeant and realize that if you do not figure this out as a chief, if we don't make certain changes on how to eliminate bureaucracy and compete with near-peer adversaries, by the time Staff Sergeant Currier is ready to sit in your seat, he could be on the number 2 Air Force. And that's unacceptable. And we could never say, well, 2's okay. And we're not used to, Chief Sullivan and I aren't used to that type of talk.
No. No.
And so it challenges. So what that is telling me, the decisions I make today and the things I put in place today will affect the outcome for you when it's time for you to sit in my seat. So I struggle with that. I'm still trying to figure out, where can I remove bureaucracy? Where can we approve? Where can we develop ourselves and change ourselves to meet this sudden adversary that's competing for the best Air Force or the best military in the world?
Yeah, that's a big one, kind of. I mean, the whole Air Force is thinking that right now.
Right. And we're not used to hearing that kind of, and I'm sure, sir, you as well. Back in the, we had complete air dominance. You said you retired 8 years ago?
Yes.
Yeah. So you left in a season where complete unchallenged air dominance, and that may not be the case is what they're telling us in the future if we don't turn our attention to it now.
It's kind of strange for me to hear. I've only been here a couple of years, but I feel like just with my generation, everything's always changing. You're just used to, it's going to change again. So it's not something that I'm like, whoa, this is a shocker. I mean, obviously it's like we've got to do something about it, but I don't know. It's just not the same. It's neat to hear that perspective.
Thanks.
And how do we accelerate change? We do it with our most important commodity, and making our most important commodity realize how important they are to fit into the whole fight, and that's the individual airman. And I think one thing that happens in all wings is that some airmen, based on their jobs or their AFSCs or whatever, don't exactly feel like they're as big a part of a role as other people. And in my opinion, that's just not the case. If we did not need you, you would not be here. I always like to use the tip of the spear analogy. Everybody says that the SEALs or Delta Force or whoever is the tip of the spear. Hey, that's fantastic. But what's the tip of the spear without the rest of the implement? Is it an implement of destruction, or is it just a little char of metal? It's just a little chunk of metal. It's not going to harm you. So when you think of your airmen, the entire spear, every aspect of it is important. So my question becomes, outside of, for you, Staff Sergeant Currier, outside of your own people within, your immediate section, other people throughout the wing, what are you doing that helps them feel important, that they are engaged in this mission and that we can't do without them, no matter if they're, services, logistics, our defenders who are near and dear to my heart or throughout. What are some things that you and the people within your section are doing to integrate all the airmen in and let everybody on this base and everybody in the Air Force know that they are important?
That's definitely something that really strikes, pretty close to me because, I've always believed, there's a reason why we're all paid exactly the same. We all do have just an equally important job as one another. It doesn't matter whether you're in services or you're a security guard. And I think that it's so important that everyone knows that no one's more important than one another. Especially where rank comes into play, because it's all a well-oiled machine from top to bottom. Everyone has their specific position that they play. And I think it's most important that, you make sure that you are, in tying it back to mentorship, you have to make sure that you are asserting to your airmen that, what they do matters. And they're not just, another cog in the machine, rather, they are the machine, more or less. You don't want them to think that they have a less sense of self-worth, especially with the connotations that people might go into the military, as enlistee versus officer, for instance. You don't want them to think that just because, they don't have a lieutenant bar on their chest that they're any less valuable. Absolutely.
Chief, what are your feelings?
I would agree with Sergeant Currier. The valuing, the most precious commodity, which is your airmen, the people aspect of it. And, how do you do that? You validate it. And I can't give everybody an award. I can't give everybody a coin. It has to be targeted, deliberate times that I do certain things for impact. But one thing I could do, probably one of the most valuable thing that I have as a command chief, is my time. And I can only do what a command chief can do. And that means, like, sometimes I remember I was walking down a hallway in one of our organizations, at the Air Wing, and there was a bunch of guardsmen in there eating lunch together, breaking bread at a conference table. It was lunchtime, and I was walking by, and I just gave them a flip, hey, how you doing? And kept on walking, and they're like, Chief. I said, you know what? That's all guardsmen in there. How often do I get to network with our guardsmen? Drill weekend is like a fire hose sometimes, and we move at such an accelerated pace. And I turned around, and I came back, and I walked into the room, and I sat down with them. I said, you know what? I kind of checked myself. I said, I'm here for you, and I don't often get to see you in this environment. And, drill weekend, you're usually standing in a formation or training and drilling. And, I don't want this moment to come by, and miss this moment. So I just wanted to say thank you. I said, I don't even know why you guys are here today, in what you're trying to accomplish, and, what your focus is. But I just wanted to say thank you, and sit down for a minute with you and just enjoy this moment. And senior NCO came up to me afterwards. It was about 2 or 3 days later, and he thanked me for that. He's now a first sergeant. He said, Chief, I can't tell you how much that meant that you turned around and came back, in the room. He goes, it just made us felt valued in this organization. To get that from you, not because of who I am, but what I represent. Right. And I said, so I hope that answered your question.
It did, and it is that thank you, that gratitude for everybody. That's the important thing. It dawned on me the other day when I was getting a cup of coffee and I was in uniform, and somebody walked up and said, "Thank you for your service." And I don't know why I said it, but I said, I haven't earned your thank you, but you know who has? The men and women I serve with in my wing, so I'll accept it for them. And I'm walking away thinking, geez, that was the corniest thing in the world I just said, but I meant it. I meant it when I said it. It just came out. And it's like, what can we do at all levels to convey that all the way down? This podcast, I would not be here. It would be nothing if it was not for my co-host. This is 100% her. I just talk a lot. I'm a talking head. It is 100% her. It would not be here without her. And it would not be here without Tim Sandlin, our civilian PA. It's one team, everybody important. So thank you to them. And when we get to our ranks, we kind of become the focal points, but it's not. It's Staff Sgt Currier. It's the Airmen. They're the thank you. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. You hit it heartfelt with me.
I really like the transparency that both of you have shown in your answers. And it's something that I really enjoy from leadership when they take the opportunity to be transparent that way. Just being transparent enough to stop and say to the airman, not like, this is my scheduled time to come and see you, but say, hey, I was going to keep walking, but you know what? I don't get that chance to talk to you very much. That's nice. Or the transparency to say, hey, it's not me, it's everybody. So that's cool and appreciated. I think Staff Sgt Currier feels the same way.
Absolutely.
Something from an airman level.
Okay.
As a new airman, you're learning your job. You have a lot of trial and error. You make a lot of mistakes, and you just kind of can't help it. It's a new environment, and it is what happens. Is that something that you guys have all experienced as well? And how do you keep on going from that?
You looking at me?
Anybody.
Well, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay.
No, please.
So definitely, I would say that definitely ties in, especially with the last episode of the podcast, that resiliency, absolutely. I believe, and it was harped on last time, that adversity really shapes you into a better human being. It does. It can only strengthen you. And honestly, I absolutely live by that, and all of us experience resiliency all the time. It's never like not all the time is it, something terrible in your life happens and your whole life turns around. It's more often than not, it's the small things just happen to start piling up and piling up and piling up, and we all need that, that social backbone to, keep us standing.
Definitely. Thank you.
So mistakes. I'm going to continue to be transparent because I think there's value sometimes in being confident that we aren't flawless, and your leaders don't have all the answers all the time. And I'm sure, Tim, you could agree with that. So mistakes, difficult times. I remember I have lived like on paper a flawless career as a loadmaster. I was evaluator twice, on 2 different airframes, and it's difficult to achieve that. And I remember after we transitioned into the C-17, I was out there, and it was kind of new. It was one of my first times flying alone, and there was we had to return. We took off. It was a local, and it was a low-level threat. It was just something hey, let's figure this out before we get too far away from base and make sure we're okay. And we were. And but the reason why we had to return potentially, that I may have overlooked something on a checklist. And so I remember when the maintenance came on the airplane to check it out and gave me the thumbs up. Hey, you're good to go. And so engines were running. We could have taken right back off and and pressed on with the mission of the day. And so very difficult time. I had a chance to get away with something, and it was just a minor oversight, but I had a chance to get away with it. And I chose, while the engines was running, to call the aircraft commander down and explain to him if they're correct of what they think may have happened, then I'm at fault. And that means I missed that step. And it's inconceivable to me that I would miss a step on the checklist. But nevertheless, if that's what they're saying has happened, then I need to own that. And I told the aircraft commander, I said, you need to call it in to the director of operations and see if he's okay with us taking back off, because I'm not until we get that approval. And next thing you know, I'm standing downstairs and the engines are shutting down. So I knew his decision has been made, and that meant for me to what we call in operations my first Q3, where I'm decertified and I need to be retrained. Difficult time, but I remember sleeping well that night because I had a chance to kind of sweep it under the carpet, and I was tested when nobody was looking. And I decided to, do the right thing and open it up for evaluation, even though the outcome potentially was embarrassing and humiliating a little bit, but it was still the right thing. I think I'm a better airman for it.
I love that story because it ties in 2 things. Your integrity led to a adversity in your life, and you knew that was going to be the case. It reminds me of an old movie I watched one time, Kingdom of Heaven. It was Jerusalem wars and crusades and all that other stuff, but that's not important. The important part was there was some oath that these knights had to take, and one of the things was to tell the truth always, even if it leads to your own death. And I remember that line kind of struck me like, yeah, who's ever going to do that?
Right.
And now we have a situation where you created adversity in your life because integrity came first. I love that. That's a great lesson. As we wrap up, I just had one more question for both of you, and that's, what are your final thoughts and wisdom, and what else would you like to share with the listeners before we conclude? Sorry, Currier.
So I would definitely say that first and foremost, you have to take care of the lowest airmen first, and because they truly are the future. Even at my rank, I'm just a new staff sergeant, and the people behind me are not that far, but you have to keep that ball rolling. You can't slow down on remembering the fact that the newest people entering the military now are going to be the leaders 20, 25 years down the line, and you have to start mentoring the day they arrive.
Absolutely.
So for me, Chief, I thought about it, if you allowed me to close it out, and if you asked a question similar to what you just asked, I thought about it last night, and I actually got a little emotional about this one. And so I'll leave you with this. Hopefully in 2 to 3 minutes I could get through it. I have 6,500 flight hours. I've landed on every continent in the world, pretty much.
Wow.
And I've been to more countries than I even remember. Sometimes like, hey, you've been there. I was like, yeah, you're right, I was. And, so I know what's out there. I know the struggles of the world. I've experienced it and I lived it. And every time at the conclusion of a mission where we land back in the United States and we get off that jet and my feet hit the ground of the United States of America, figuratively, I kiss the ground that we walk in. And it's such a blessing, this nation, and what has been given to us, this thing that we call freedom. It's something we've come to know, enjoy, and love, and live in it, but it's still not a well-embraced concept, believe it or not, in most of the world. And I found that freedom is something that our Constitution, it's living, the Declaration of Independence, I love that document. It's living, it's breathing, but it's tender and it's fragile. And it's something that needs tending to, and it needs resolve to protect it and to keep it. This is a great nation. I've been blessed to serve since 1983 and to wear the red, white, and blue on my shoulders. And and just looking across the table, you Sergeant Currier and then Airmen Scadulas, it gives me, peace in my heart that I feel like I'm passing the torch to a generation of people that share these values of, they appreciate the greatness of this nation and what we have done in this world. So I just want to end it like that. It's been a great podcast. Thank you, and God bless America.
Absolutely.
Thank you both for being on this podcast. Staff Sergeant Currier, Chief Caulfield, we're glad you are here. If you stumbled upon this episode, please check out all the rest.
I would also like to say, if there's anybody out here listening that would be interested and have a perspective for the Chevrons podcast, please contact me. And I'm easy to find in the global, Sean.Sullivan17, because it's such an uncommon name. But we'd like to have you on, and thank you for listening. And we'll talk to you next episode.